For those who don't know who I am, I was in the military unit for seemed like forever. And I wound up as the trainer, the database manager, property book officer. Everyone in the unit had 10 different hats, and so, you know, I could go down and list mine, but basically I was a controlled remote viewer for the military, retired, and in 1995, December of 1995, when the CIA basically declassified all of this, the news got out, and I was working as a Beltway bandit, you know, for a company that paid me regular salary but charged the government millions of dollars for a $100 program. And so driving into DC and out every day, and all of a sudden, people started calling me, contacted me, saying they would like to take remote viewer training. At the beginning, we were getting requests for training at the rate of from 8 to 15 students a day. At some point, driving into the Beltway, in the road rage traffic and all that, it dawned on me, maybe I don't have to make a living this way. And so maybe I can make a living doing what I really enjoy doing, which is the remote viewing and the remote viewing training. And so we developed Problem Solutions Innovations as a remote viewing company. I'd had it as a small data analysis company up until that time. The data analysis aspect is still a very important part of PSI, but now what we're doing is we're collecting as much data as we can about remote viewing and its applications in the real world, about students and their individual abilities, capabilities, strengths and weaknesses, and so on. And so we have all of this database management power behind the training and the work that we're doing. And it's marrying up very well. Let me start out on this. When Paul asked me to do this very, very selective subject, I said, you know, this would be fine. I didn't know how many people it would interest because I don't know how many people out there are training. But I realized that for those people who do the remote viewing, sitting at home alone, they ask friends and neighbors to select targets for them. And likely as not, you'll get back a picture of a painting, and the painting has within it a picture on the wall, and that painting may have a painting of a painting, and or you may get back, someone may give you something that they think is really funny, and it's a piece of Picasso's artwork as your target. And if so, then you have found out the hard way that there are some targets that are going to give you all kinds of problems, and there are other targets that are going to be easy to view. It's nice to think that that you can become a remote viewer and remote view any target. In actual fact, it's not true. Different targets have their own sort of remote viewing syndrome as to who can remote view them, who can't, how hard they are to remote view, and how easy. You take a remote viewer who does excellent work with pictures and envelopes, and then you put him to work for the police, and his first job is a missing child, and that child, they find, is now chopped up into about 50 pieces and spread over about 5 acres. That same viewer who does excellent work may have an extremely difficult time with that target. And so, the title of this is Selecting the Best Targets for Remote Viewer Training or Education. Let me go into the word training. There are some fallacies about the definition of remote viewing. If you listen to the speakers up here, everyone has a different definition, slightly different definition, and everyone will have a slightly different definition of training. You will hear speakers up here who will say that they have trained remote viewers and people doing meditation or people who are natural psychics or something, and that training doesn't count because training doesn't matter. Training doesn't show that there's any improvement of any kind or something like that. When the thing became declassified and remote viewing became a thing of public knowledge, all of a sudden, people who had been crystal ball psychics became crystal ball remote viewers. Palm readers became palm remote viewers. I had a woman call me one time and say that her mother was the original remote viewer and discovered remote viewing through the use of looking at tea leaves at the bottom of a cup. And so it was her mother who had invented remote viewing. And so one of the problems is that when somebody says, I used a trained remote viewer, you have to say, trained by whom, trained in what, and what were they trained in, how long were they trained, were they given 2 days of training and poof, they're a professional, or did they go through lengthy training that requires years and years and years? To what level were they trained, and so on. When someone says training doesn't work, you have to ask them. In fact, if someone says that, as soon as the question period starts, ask them, oh, what training have you gone through that didn't work? And if they haven't gone through training and experienced it, then, then they're making judgments on something they don't know. By the same token, you'll hear trainers say, oh, all those lab guys, they're just doing stuff and that really doesn't matter. The first question for them is, oh, what lab experiments have you been in that didn't matter? Because the lab guys are doing some really important work. They're finding out some very important stuff. The guys who are teaching training are teaching it toward application, toward getting out into the trenches and actually using it in a non-laboratory situation. Russell was talking about the unit and how he felt that we had probably found ways to overcome pollution in front loading. No kidding. Do any of y'all know about the Great Christmas Attack? It was normal for us. You may hear people say that in the unit, we always worked double blind. We never knew what the target was. Absolutely not true. There were rarely any targets that we didn't know that this was a hostage situation. This was a political plans and intentions. This was looking for a warhead or something like that. And so we had to learn, us guys in the trenches, we had to learn to go in with tons of pollution and always go for the unknown. We had to figure if logic or spy in the sky satellites or anything else could have answered this question, they wouldn't have come to the crazy psychics. And so dump the logic, dump everything else, let's go for the unknown. And yet we would go into a session knowing this was a hostage, this was, and so on. You'd go into a session and they would say, okay, we're going to give you encrypted coordinates. And by the way, when you get to stage 6, here's your map of Lebanon to see where the hostage is. And we had to work under those conditions, absolutely non-laboratory conditions. And we had to work that on a daily basis. And so when someone says remote viewing or even trained remote viewer, at this point, you have to say, well, trained in what? In palm remote viewing, crystal ball remote viewing, reading goat entrails remote viewing, or what? So there's a large spread of things that are called remote viewing. Someone yesterday said, asked the question as to whether IRVA was going to set up standards. One of IRVA's self-appointed tasks is to set up standards and qualifications. However, the field is such that right now, even the major players in the field cannot agree on the standards because they can't agree on what remote viewing is and isn't. Makes it very difficult. Right now, the whole field is in a state of flux. Added to that, you have anti-training people and training people, plus you have trainers who are out there saying, excuse me? Oh, sorry about that. What happened? Well, I wanted to thank my wife for loaning me her computer. I don't know why she made backups beforehand, you know. Try rebooting the thing here. What do you know? And watch out for that cord from now on. And you have one trainer saying, mine is the best way. Another trainer says, no, mine is the best way. And another trainer says, no, mine is the best way. And I would like to make right now. Glenn, Wayne, Paul, other trainers, come to my house and take my course, and I'll come to your house and take your course. Then we can know, or we can at least be qualified to say, I think mine is better or yours is better. I think that what we're going to find is that all of the differences in the training are largely in our imagination, or even more in our advertising. One of the fallacies that has come up because of this this thing where people are talking about my training's better than your training and ours is 100% accurate and so on, is that another word has come into very fuzzy definition, and that is training. One of the things that you'll find when you take formal CRV training, I hope you will, is that we do not train you to be psychic. You know, Gabi said, well, everybody has their own ability, and somebody who has difficulty playing chopsticks, we may not be able to make them concert pianists and all that. That's true. Over your lifetime, you have had all of those situations where you did something psychic and, oh, don't do that, you know, you're going to go to hell for that. And you have had this beat down. We don't teach you to be psychic. We help you learn to stop being not psychic. And there's a very big difference there. We help you to learn, help you to teach yourself how to stop being non-psychic, because it's there. We just sort of free you up to use it. If you ask most of the remote viewers in the unit, they'll tell you that they're extremely thankful to Ingo Swan for developing the CRV method, because the protocol is what gave them the ability. That's not my case. I reported to the unit, and a few days after I was there, I was impatient, and I said, okay, when do I learn this stuff? And Skip Atwater took me over to the other building, and he sat me down in the front room, into the operations building, sat me down in the front room, and he said, okay, I want you to look around this room. Look at the molding all the way around the room at the top, and look around. And he said, I don't care what you've been told anywhere in life. In this room, it's okay to be psychic. The burden of years just fell off. The credit I give to my abilities, I give to Skip Atwater. And so that's what I try to do. I try to teach you, or try to help you learn to stop being not psychic. Okay. Because of political problems and so forth in the field, in the area, most of you know that I also have been running a thing called the Assigned Witness Program. We have divorced the Assigned Witness Program from PSI because one of the things we realized is that the talent that's out there, the natural talent, and the students from the other trainers, from the other disciplines and all that, there's a lot of good people out there who can really do some good work. But as long as the Assigned Witness Program was attached to PSI, there was that political thing in there. So we have made it a standalone organization, divorced me from it, just for the purpose of getting rid of the politics. And we are now forming the database, inviting each of the trainers to learn that standardized method of reporting, which will allow them to work through the Assigned Witness Program, to work with police departments, archaeologists, doctors, business people, research and development, scientific research and development, so on. Well, thank you. Then as we go, we're going to, in a backhanded manner, I guess, be standardizing much of the industry, and I hope in the process we're going to get rid of all the politics and so on. Because of that, there are some formats that PSI has already gone over to meet the Assigned Witness Program, and I'll be offering these same formats to anyone who wants them. It's not a requirement. If you want to use them, you can. One of the formats is in the selection of targets for training. Now, there are three modes of remote viewing when it's actually put into practice. One is training, one is practice, and the other is operations, real world. Get out there in the trenches and find the kids. And so, in everything I'm talking about here, I want you to understand that I'm not talking about your practice targets or whatever. I'm talking about those targets which are meant for training and training you to find different types of things. Don't lock up. It works. One of the main problems most students have when they first come for training is simply fear of failure. In fact, it has its own acronym when you start setting things aside at the very beginning, FOF, fear of failure. They have a fear of lack of personal talent. Many people call me and say, well, I don't want to spend that much money in the course if I don't know I can't do it. And so can you assure me that I can do it? And the answer is no. I'm afraid I can't because I don't know whether you can do it either. I just know that we haven't had anybody who hasn't been able to improve. How far you can improve, I don't know. There's also a fear of not knowing what to do. Here is where Ingo Swann and his protocol shines above everything else. I'll get to this further on, but let me tell you a little story. I was going to learn how to channel one time. One of the people in our unit was a channeler. She was going to teach me how to channel. So she selected a target, and she said, okay, get in touch with your spirit guides. And I said, well, how do I do that? And she said, okay, well, you don't know their name yet. They'll tell you their name. And so you just say, Spirit Guide, I welcome you into my session. And I said, okay, Spirit Guide, I welcome you into my session. And she said, okay, now take the pen and put it to the paper and then just let it happen. And I put the pen to the paper and nothing happened. And she said, okay, ask your Spirit Guide for information. And I said, Spirit Guide, please give me some information. And she said, now put your pen back down and just let it happen. After about 20 minutes of this, I finally got up and I said, look, I'm going to lunch. If it happens while I'm gone, would you write it down? It just, you know, I have come to firmly believe that anytime an instructor tells you, I may make some enemies here, by the way, anytime an instructor tells you, just let it happen, what they're really saying is, I don't know what to tell you to do. It's not your problem. It's not your weakness, it's theirs. The Ingo Swann method, at every point along the way, has a specific thing for you to do. That helped me learn remote viewing better than anything else, because I'll tell you, it just doesn't happen otherwise. Comparing themselves to others and coming up short. We all do this. We all do this all the time. In fact, we have found that, let's say, Tom, let's say you're doing a session and I say, this is a really important target and this is so important, I'm only giving this to you and Joe McMonagle. Guess what he's going to view? He's going to view Joe's session because Joe's a great viewer. Well, Joe makes no bones about the fact that he's wrong half the time. He only accesses the target 50% of the time. What if this is one of those times when Joe misses the target? Tom will too, okay? Because he is wanting to find, he's got that impression that Joe is better than he is, and therefore, compared to me, I better find out what Joe wants. Now, he'll do this on a subconscious level. He doesn't know he's doing it, but we've tried this, we've gone through experiments with this, we know that it happens. It's called telepathic overlay, or in the terminology we use, it's called the neighbor's cat. They always have the idea of, what if I can't do it? What if I screw up? In other words, one of the most main problems the student has is self-image when they come in for training. And therefore, many of them just find they don't come in for training. For those that can't read this, it says, it's psychic advisor final exam. Having premonitions that they were going to flunk the exam, several students walked out without even lifting a pencil. And many people who could be doing this and who could be fantastically great at it have that human tendency to say, but what if I screw up? Well, that makes you like every other remote viewer in the world. That's what happens if you screw up. We'll give you another target and maybe later you won't. Okay? The human tendency is we externalize success and we internalize failure. That is, you have a good session, what do you think? Man, this stuff works great. You have a bad session. What do you think? Man, I screwed that one up. I'm no good at this. I can't do this stuff. If you have a good session, Ingo gets the credit. If you have a bad session, it's your own fault. You know, and we beat ourselves to death doing this all the time. And this is one of the aspects of human nature which makes the education of remote viewers very difficult. There are aspects of training itself which makes it even worse. The trainer, I will not use names because actually I'm not thinking of any right now, but there are trainers in this field who, let me sum up all of my comments about them by saying they're training for their own glory and edification, not for the students. Those trainers, don't go to them. Look before you leap in this field of training. The students are the trainers' expectations. There are many trainers who expect you to do professional quality work the first or second day. And if you don't, they'll say, well, you can't do this, maybe I'll get somebody else. There are students who expect the same thing. I had a student one time come to the class, and after the first day, she wanted to take over as the secretary of PSI and run the thing, and she would relieve me of training, and she would take all of the basic classes from then and teach all the basic classes from then on. And I said, but you don't know how to remote view yet. And she said, well, I've been in it all day. This expectation, by the third day, when she was having to actually score her targets and not getting hundreds, she actually went into our living room and sat down and cried for about 30 minutes because she was so disappointed in herself. Somehow she had failed. As it turned out, she's an excellent remote viewer, but those expectations she came with had to be overcome. Peripheral problems. There are peripheral problems to remote viewing education. One is attitude. A student comes, and I've had students come and pay the tuition just to come and show me that it doesn't work. Hey, I'll admit it doesn't work the first day. I'll take the next 3 days off and you go home, you know. I'll keep the money, but religion. Now, the people who have the problems with religion generally weed themselves out and they don't come. A history of self-doubt, self-failure, and so on. Added to that, but not on this list, is a history of self-success. We have found that one of the types of people who are very hard to train in CRV is natural psychics who are really good at it. You go down onto Bourbon Street and here's this jazz pianist who's playing along and has never taken a piano lesson in his life and is just really good at it. And you walk in and say, well, you've got to learn the scales, you know. You'll be out of there. You know, the bouncer will kick you out. Because there are some people who do not need training. And there are some people for whom training is such a drag that what we've found is that if we take a natural psychic who's very good at what they do, they tend to become better psychics because they get more control over what they do. But they select out of it what they need and they dump the rest, which is what they should do. And so they become better psychics, but they never become remote CRV, controlled remote viewers. They'll never sit down and do the scoring of the data sheet and turn in their data sheets and do all that paperwork and the numbers and everything else. Outside personal problems and situations, we've had people come to class who had a death in the family right before the class, or were expecting a death in the family during the class or whatever. These problems make the training situation even worse. Now, in all of these, well, except the trainer, the trainer can do something about their own education, but on all of these others, there's really nothing you as a trainer can do about it. However, there is one thing that you can do about it, and that's part of what I'm leading into the subject here, and that is poor course material. And that's what I'm really wanting to talk about right now. Course material. You've got the trainer who must know the subject thoroughly, who must be able to answer any question the student has. Or, if you can't answer the question, be honest enough to say, I don't know. Don't tap dance. Don't lie to the student just to look good. Must be able to teach the student how to get out of pitfalls, because they will fall into these pitfalls. When a student gives you a call and says, hey, this terrible thing just happened in my session, what do I do? Know what to do. If not, you're not ready to teach yet, okay? If you can't help your student get out of these pitfalls, you're not ready to teach. Must be able to match the tasking and targets to the student's training levels and abilities. That is, when you have a student, all your students are not going to be the same. So if you try to teach them all the same, you're not going to be very effective. Every student is an individual, and each one progresses at a different rate, different speed. You must be able to show the student what to do with the information that they gain. Many teachers, many who are sitting here, in fact, I hope they didn't diss me and not come, have the remote viewing session, and that's it. Yeah, you did well. They don't keep data, they don't keep documentation, they don't keep track of a viewer's strengths and weaknesses, they don't keep track of the individual viewer's needs and so forth. This is a lot of paperwork for the teacher, but if the teacher doesn't do it, then maybe they should get a job doing something else, because, you know, they're not dedicated enough. You have to be able to database, to show the student how to do all the paperwork afterwards, to do the reporting and so on. But Paul asked me to do targets. And so right now, we're working on tasking and targets. Tasking and targeting are very intermeshed, because you task a person to do this target, okay? You have to know what kind and level of tasking the individual student needs. In order to do that, you have to know where they are on the learning curve. Do you give a massively humongous, complex target to somebody on their first day of class? No. Do you give a simple target to somebody who's been doing this for 14 years? No. You use your talent at the level where it exists. There was a study done not too long ago, and I took part in it. And I got vegetation on a flat surface. Those are my gestalts, flat surface, you know. And so I went into the sensories. Vegetation was green, smelled like vegetables and things like that. The flat surface was brown. And I thought, that can't be it. And so there was my stray cat. There was my AOL. That can't be it. That was it. And so I said, well, I've got to find out more about this. The brown flat surface must be land, and the vegetation must be grass. Therefore, and I went on, and about an hour later, I finally wound up with a target, which was people crying at the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and here was the green grass of the mall, and and all of this. The actual target was a picture of an asparagus on a cutting board. You know, it was something you give to a student the first day, but I guess my pride in my level or something, I thought, well, that can't be it. And sure enough, that was it. And so my own stray cats made me miss the tasking. But when you give tasking for training purposes, keep track of every student. Know where they are on the growth curve. To do that, you need a database. Just as the Assigned Witness Program database is going to be open to all trainers and all viewers of all the different disciplines, we're also going to offer the PSI database for the other trainers if they want to do databasing. We have the engine going. We have the database. We will not look into the other person's records. It's not what we're there for. We just have the thing in place. We know that different trainers need databasing capabilities and don't have them. Therefore, if you want the databasing capabilities, let my wife know. We can put your students in the database, give them passwords that only they can get to, and they can start databasing. You can start accessing their records, and and it will help your students along this way. AWP's database is also online and open to students and trainers alike. Okay, all of this, and I finally get around to targets. In order to match a target to a student's ability and level, you have to have a way of knowing what the student's abilities and levels are. That means keep track of your students, do the databasing. You have to know how to task toward that level. This is one thing that I've found that teachers don't have a problem doing. When they find out what level their student is at, they'll take out a stack of targets and they'll go through and they'll say, no, yeah, this is the right one for that student. And so they already know how to do that. That's not a problem. You have to have a way of selecting the targets which are appropriate for that level. Many of the trainers that I've met and talked with know that the students are at different levels, but they have never quantified those levels and said, okay, well, let's do targets of this type for that level. And so, in order to work this for the assigned witness program, we have developed a way that we're now using at PSI, and I'm going to just introduce that way to you. If you can come up with a better way, hey, we're open to suggestions. If you want to use this way, we'll provide you with everything you need and hopefully get some standardization going in the field. First of all, we have found out that you can separate targets by where the viewer has to put their most work. You can also separate targets by the type of tasking you're going to give. Some viewers overall may be good at remote viewing, but remote viewing violence, no. Whereas the same scene with non-violence, they can remote view it. And so you have to know the type of tasking that a viewer can do. Describe the activity, the event, the location, an object, person, and so on. You also can evaluate targets by the problems they will cause the student. This is one of the things we do because we keep track of the student's strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, when a student writes to me and says, send me a packet of 10 more targets, I look in the database and I say, what is this student's weaknesses? Oh, well, look at this. They have a problem describing shapes accurately. So I go through and I find those targets which are full of geometric shapes, which will give them good practice in their weakness. Excuse me, I didn't mean to cough. When we send a student a package of targets, there are several sheets before the actual targets. And the sheet right exactly before the target explains how all of what I'm going to do, explains again to them how all of what I'm going to show you works. Down at the bottom of it is a phrase that all of my students have learned well to remember. A practice target, the purpose of a practice target is not to find out something about the target. The purpose of a practice target is to find out something about yourself. And that is really and honestly the purpose of a practice target. But anyway, there's a whole stack of targets, and so the student reaches in, grabs the top one, and pulls it out sort of to say, okay, this is the target I'm going to work. Then they work it. As they work it, they may or may not want front loading. They may or may not, most of them don't. And so this is all they do. They work through it, and then they run into a little bit of problems. Now, the CRV method, like Gabi was talking about yesterday, the viewer begins by getting the gestalts of the site, just the major overall features. Then they start making sensory contact. They begin to see, feel, smell, taste, and hear the site impressions. Then they start getting dimensional impressions. And then they go into the more complex, Gabi had these broken out, I just made it a fourth thing here, into the more complex aspects of the sites, like relationships, concepts, intangibles, emotions, plans, intentions, and things like that. Let's take an actual target. Remember, we have the fear of failure and we internalize success. That looks like a pretty neat target, right? For remote viewing? Anybody think that's a neat target? That sucks. Let me show you why. I'm going to start my session and I'm going to get the overall impressions. The overall impressions, gestalts meaning man-made land, space, organics, things like that, okay? So I start my impression and I get man-made. And I work a little more and I get man-made. And I work a little more and I get man-made. My first tendency is to say, boy, I'm screwing this one up. Hey, that's all there is. And yet a viewer, especially a beginning viewer in this situation, will say, I can't do this. I'm really messing up. Okay. On the back of every target, I have a little chart. When the viewer gets into this situation where they say, man, I just can't do this, this chart, they pull it out a little bit further as a last resort, and they look at it and they say, oh, look, there aren't hardly any gestalts. So stop killing myself over the fact that I'm not getting any and move on to sensories. Okay, well, there's not going to be very many sensories either, but I'll see what I can get. And they start getting colors, and on this target, you get lots of nice colors. Texture, smooth. Temperature, room temperature. You go through the different senses, you get one thing in each one. Left to their own devices, a viewer will think, I can't do this, because they're having a bad session, when really you've picked a bad target, okay? When you have these four things, a viewer can even, in fact, pull these out one line at a time and judge themselves. If they have a hard time, they can see, hey, it's not me, okay? PSI's target evaluation chart is simply this: gestalt, sensories, dimensionals, and more conceptual things like relationships, the more advanced things. This will become clear as we start working this. So let's take this target. Okay, how many gestalts? Lots of gestalts? No, just the one gestalt. How about sensories? Well, you got a few colors. You got one taste, no taste at all, some textures and so on. Dimensions? Yeah, you got a lot of dimensions. So put your work into dimensions here. When you get down to the thing, then spend all your time working at places where your work's going to do some good. Conceptuals? This is for decoration, for storage. That's about it. This is a really bad target. Okay, if you separate by task, when you get to the real world, and so you may as well start doing this in training, when you get to the real world, the police, let's say, will know that there's a murder scene. They don't care about that. They already know about all that. They want to know about one aspect of the target. For most remote viewing, they say, okay, there's a picture in an envelope. describe the picture. Once you get them along further, you're going to say, describe the location part of the picture. Describe the man-made part of the picture. Describe that part of the picture which deals with an event or an activity or the activity and location or whatever. At this point, you're using complex targets that may have a lot of information and may take 4 and 5 hours to do the target. But you don't want to burn your viewer out, so you tell them what you want them to do. And so as a result, you tell them what the specific tasking is. The tasking should never provide information about the target, ever. Don't tell the viewer anything about the target. They're there to tell you about the target. You can tell them where to put their work, but don't tell them about the target. It should only tell the viewer where to put their work, to keep them from wasting time. It also allows the student to check before ending the session to make sure they have done what is wanted of them. So a viewer goes ahead and does the whole session, winds up page 40, whatever, and writes their summary, and right before they take the feedback out, they say, let's see if I did what I was tasked to do. They pull it out a little more and it says, describe the activity. Oh, well, I described the location and I described a bunch of things there, but I didn't go for activity. Fine, don't end the session yet, and then they can go back and do more. All viewers quit too soon. They always do. And so that last little line down there tells you specific tasking. If they haven't finished, they can go back and do that. You can also rate the target by the problems it will cause the student to have. Certain aspects of the target will cause the viewer to have specific session problems, such as emotionally disturbing targets. One of the rules is anything you'll turn your eyes away from, you'll tend to turn your mind away from too. Those aspects of the target which you will avoid with your eyes, you will tend to avoid with your mind. Also, emotionally attractive targets. This is what's called doorknobbing. Anything which you will turn your eyes toward, you will tend to turn your mind toward. And therefore, there may be one very fascinating part of the picture, and man, the viewer just zooms in on that and gets it 100%. This doorknobbing, one time I was doing a target. It was when I first got there, and I described a house that was kind of yellowed with age and so on, an old-timey house, and all of a sudden, right in the middle of the session, I got this gemstone, and that's my hobby anyway, and it was attractive to me, and there was this gemstone. It was clear like a diamond, clear white, and I started drawing it. I drew all the facets and everything. I drew actually quite a good-sized picture of it. This was one of those beacon targets, and we went out to the site, and here was this old historic house. We walked up on the porch, and here was a crystal doorknob on the front door, and I said, that's it. I took out my session, and I held it up. I had drawn the right number of facets. I had even drawn it the same size as the doorknob. I had done a perfect target. And Skip Atwater said, yeah, but the target was the house. But I had gotten so attracted by that one thing that I couldn't even see the rest. And so this is one of the problems that all viewers have. They will get attracted to one part. And you have boring targets too. No entropy. You may have heard about the importance of entropy. Entropy being change, Shannon entropy, also including the change in contrast and so on of the actual picture. I would, from my experience, modify the fact, they say that an airport terminal is easier to view than a vase on the mantle because there's more entropy. What I have found is that it's because there is more entropy from that site to you, to where you're working. If you're working in the airport terminal, the difference in entropy between the airport terminal that you're trying to view or that vase on the mantle, the difference in entropy will make the vase on the mantle easier to view than an airport terminal. It's the difference in entropy between you and the target that seems to make the difference. Complexity beyond the student's abilities. I don't think I need to explain that. Problems. Emotions, entropy, and complexity. Okay, you can rate them low emotions and the type of emotions, neutral, positive, negative, and so on. Entropy, low, high entropy, and neutral, positive, and negative entropy. Complexity. You can say, this is a great target, but man, look at all these things in the pictures. There may be too many attractors to it. For example, okay, here's a target. This make a good target? Actually, it's students have some good success with this one because of that one zong right in your face figure. They seem to have a lot of success with this. But let's do it this way. Gestalts. How many gestalts do we have? A lot? A little? Well, we have some plants in the background. We have man-made, 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 space. Oh, motion. There's a little elevator going up and down. So we'll have a few gestalts. Sensories. Yeah, there are colors, there are sounds, smells, all that. Dimensions, tons of dimensions in this picture. Conceptuals, it's a lobby. I mean, what's it for? It's for being a lobby, that's about it. Standing, waiting, going somewhere, and so on. And so to judge this by the CRV level method, it would have a rating like that. However, when you ask the viewer to view something, what do you want him to view? Do you want him to specifically view the man-made? Do you want the location or whatever? You can task whatever you want. You could task one leaf on that bush down there in the corner if you wanted to. For this one, I just said location. Emotions. Is this an emotional target? No. The emotions that would be there, would they be positive or negative? No, they're neutral. Entropy. Well, there's a little bit going on. There's an elevator going up and down, but that's about it. So low plus. And any entropy that is there is fairly neutral. But this is busy. There are too many attractors. There are too many things to pull a viewer off. And so rating this target by these three methods, you have set this target for a specific level of student or a specific level that a student may reach and know when it's the right time to give them that target. Okay, here's another one. Gestalts, yeah, we've got water, we've got people, we've got man-made, we've got space, we've got motion, activity, and so on. Ooh, already, okay. By the same token, you task the activity, you've got odd picture shape may distract things, okay? And so you give yourself a little hint. Okay, here's an Eskimo stuck in the snow. I've been told it's time to stop, so I'm going to go on through these pretty fast. Anybody has any questions on these, raise your hand immediately, okay? This is a man climbing the roof, climbing across the roof of a snow cave, and activity and location is something that the viewer can describe on both. Emotions may cause fear problems. Okay, this one, almost no gestalts, no sensories, high in dimensions, but that's about it. Is this a good target? No, this is a really bad target. Describe the man-made part of the site. That's all you could do, okay? However, look at this. No lead-in to the session could be used for mapping practice. I might save this target and give it to one of my advanced students and see if in their mapping they draw 6 fingers on a glove. Anybody notice there's 6 fingers on this glove? Yeah. Yes. Entropy is one of those words that you'll get different definitions for. Entropy basically means change. Okay? A rock is right 0 level entropy. Okay? But it does change over centuries of time. And so it's not only the change and the amount of change, but it's the speed of change as well, all mixed in. Paper oxidizes when it burns. Burns up very quickly. That's high entropy. A piece of iron oxidizes, and over the next 100 years, it may rust into powder, into ashes. That's low entropy. It's the same change, but it's over a longer period of time. Okay, anybody see any problems with this target? It's a great target. It's got activities, everything else. Never give a viewer 2 targets at once, especially a student. Don't do that to them. Here's a mantle scene. Somebody got a printer for Christmas in their stocking. Location. What if the viewer hates Christmas? You've got to know your viewers. How about this one? Gabi told you the answer to this one yesterday. Do not give a viewer a target which does not exist. You just don't do that to a student. It may seem humorous to you. To the viewer, it is not humorous, okay? How about this one? The Oklahoma City bombing. Emotional impact. It's a great target, but it may cause fear or negative emotions. Don't give targets with strong negative emotions to students which are not yet prepared to handle them. You've got to know your students. Bungee jumper. It's a great target. This is a fantastic target. But you got to know if your student is afraid of heights. If so, they're not going to get this target. How about this one? This one may surprise you. Anybody know what's coming next? The page number is included on the bottom of the picture. Anybody know what this Arbeit macht frei means? Work will make you free. This is the gate at Dachau, right outside the ovens where they burned the people, and over 60 years later, the smell is still overpowering. And so while on the surface, this may be a good target, you've got strong avoidance on this target. Oh, here's one. How many people are in that picture? Are there?
2.
You shouldn't give a viewer targets like this. Never give a viewer of a picture of a person looking at themselves in the mirror, especially a beginning viewer. One of my students actually got this picture, and he said, kinky sex. Never give this target to anyone. Okay, and the last picture. The rule that goes along with this is the golden rule of remote viewing, tasking, and selecting pictures. Don't give a viewer any target you wouldn't want given to you, okay? Very simple rule. When you're training or when you're selecting targets for each other, don't give a target to someone that you wouldn't want given to you. Any questions at all?
When you work a target and you make the ideogram,
Yeah,
you can tell the density of data at the target when you do the ideogram, can't you?
Sure. But what if there's a target with only one ideogram and the viewer says, oh, I can't do this? Then you tell them, hey, that's all there is. Yeah.
Have you ever What about giving a null target? We had at our
No.
organization a huge fight because someone put up a target with no, an ID with no target behind it.
That's not fair.
I go with the person who objected. One time on the Art Bell list, there was this guy that kept saying, "Tell me what's in the box if you're so good." Finally, I wrote back and I said, "Why should I take my time to tell you what's in the box when there are children to be found and all that? And besides that, there's nothing in your box." And he had been trying to trick everybody. If anybody had described anything in the box, it would have proven beyond all doubt that remote viewing doesn't work. The question is, at what point do we move viewers into numbers and concepts and all? There are mileposts that we have learned along the way, such as when you move out of dimensional training is when a person starts getting concepts on their own. When they start getting the concepts, that's when you know to start the phase 4 training, the stage 4 training and all that. So there are mileposts along the way. There are signs that a student will give that let you know when to proceed with their training.